Welcome to Stuff You Should Know, a production of iHeartRadio.
Hey, and welcome to the podcast. I'm Josh, and there's Chuck and Jerry's here too, and this is the first episode of the 20026.
I thought there was already another episode out.
Yes, this is the first one, Chuck. I think this comes out on 1/1.
Really?
26.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
I thought we had already crept into 26, but that's no matter because it's still 2/5 for us.
Yeah, there's some weird time stuff that's going on. We're essentially straddling 2 years right now, and I'm wearing a silver spacesuit because of that.
All that to say, if we're a little loose, it's because this is our last recording session of the year, and so we're closing this out, or opening up the next year, with a good old-fashioned top 10 that's not a 10, just like the old days.
That's right. We're finishing out 2025 and stuff you should know fashion, right?
Yeah, just like we did in probably 2010.
Yeah, probably. Chuck, if you'll allow me to begin.
Oh boy, it's just a classic old school opening.
Chuck.
Do you have a TV?
Have you ever seen TV?
I knew it was coming. Yes.
It was either that or Webster's defines TV.
Right.
One of the two. I've seen TV too. Not only have I seen a TV, I've watched what's broadcast on TV as well, multiple times throughout my life.
Same.
It's funny. We chose this moments that changed the world, TV moments that changed the world. And as you're kind of researching this, you realize, for better or worse, man, TV it made modern culture more than anything else, I think, in the entire world. I would argue more than the internet.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, I'm just going to say it.
All right. I'm not going to argue. I'm not in an arguing mood.
Well, people who disagree, just follow us on this journey into TV moments that changed the world, and maybe your opinion will be changed. Either way, I don't fault you.
All right, great.
So let's start at the beginning when, the day that TV really kicked off in earnest. There was a day that this happened. It was April 30th, 1939 in Flushing, New York on Long Island. And if you are familiar with that date in that area, you may know that this was the 1939 World's Fair. And this is where TV got its start, where it was really kind of unveiled to the public at large.
That's right. Not the 1940 World's Fair, howstuffworks.com, because there was not one.
No.
So, TV had been around for a bit, but it wasn't super widespread at this point. I feel like we talked about this a lot lately for some reason.
Yes. Stuff is just really clicking these days. I'm not sure why.
It really is. But they had broadcast limitations. They could only broadcast, for a limited number of miles, out a limited number of miles. But by the time that World's Fair came along, they were like, hey, this is a chance to make a really big splash. The RCA Corporation, the Radio Corporation of America, which also then led the way in TVs, they were putting out some pretty good televisions at the point, but they were luxury items. And again, they didn't have the most regular broadcasting going on, but they knew that this World's Fair was a chance to make a super big splash.
Right. So, yeah, this is where they were going to start selling TVs to the public. The problem is you can have all the TVs in the world, but if you don't have anything to watch on it,
good point.
What are you going to do? Nothing. You're going to sit there like a jackass and look at a blank TV. So luckily RCA thought of this, and they founded NBC, the National Broadcasting Company, to start broadcasting stuff. So they brought the whole thing together, the broadcasting and the TVs themselves, and they debuted it on April 30th, 1939, when they, I think, created the world's first live television broadcast of Franklin Roosevelt, kicking off the 1939 World's Fair.
That's right. And we did mention this one in another episode, but he was, sort of the first president daddy of TV, granddaddy of TV. And like you said, he opened it up there, and, NBC had gotten there, and they had their, now antiquated TV technology all lined up. It was just pretty whiz-bang at the time.
Sure.
And they sent signals through these mobile broadcasting trucks, which, it's pretty amazing that in the 1930s they had the technology to even accomplish that.
Right.
So it was pretty impressive still to this day. And broadcast that signal out to about 2,000 viewers, which seemed like a big number at the time, I imagine.
I'm still impressed with news fans
Oh, yeah, sure.
of the time, which is our time.
I'm impressed with news fans of today.
That's what I mean.
Oh, okay.
I didn't get it across very well.
Yeah.
So one thing I saw, I was looking up pictures of this 1939 World's Fair, the RCA Pavilion. Apparently, they built one of their televisions in transparent, I guess, glass or something like that, maybe plastic. So you could see the internal working parts so that people wouldn't think it was just some sort of trick.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
That's how new it was.
Yeah. Oddly, since we're recording our Christmas episode, I feel like this pause before the next one is going to include like jingle bells and things.
Right.
But it's not going to. We're just simply moving on to another one, which is Disney's Wonderful World of Color.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you, like I, grew up watching, I guess by the time we were watching it in the 70s, or me in the 70s, and you likely in the 80s, it was called The Wonderful World of Disney.
I watched Walt Disney Presents, I think is what it was for me.
Oh, okay. So I guess, since I'm only a year older than you, I was watching The Wonderful World of Disney because this show had some title changes. But the reason we're talking about this at all, it's because of the advent of color television, which Walt Disney himself really got behind and was like, hey, I want to be the dude that kind of brings this to the masses.
Right. Because just like how you could have TVs but nothing to broadcast, you could have color TVs, and if you weren't broadcasting in color, what's the point? And again, this was an issue for RCA. And by then, of course, they had NBC, and NBC was rolling pretty well.
Yeah.
But Walt Disney's anthology series had started years before, and it was on ABC. ABC wasn't broadcasting in color.
No.
So Walt Disney personally held a meeting with NBC and said, we want to do this. Apparently, he told his team, he said that, he said, fellas, I want this deal. If necessary, I'll stand on my head in Macy's window.
Yeah. And all the executives said, you don't have to do that. It's a pretty good idea. So why are you being weird?
Yeah, but he was just that enthusiastic about the whole thing. But he personally went and pitched the idea to NBC. And the reason why, again, is NBC was the first network to broadcast in color. And so Walt Disney really kind of pushed this through because NBC would have broadcast in color either way, but Walt Disney wanted to do it in like high style.
Yeah, for sure. And this is a TV show that launched in 1954 and ran for 34 seasons, obviously at first in black and white. And like I mentioned earlier, the name changes. I guess they had one, between my birth and your birth, because it was initially called Disney's Wonderful World and then Magical World of Disney.
Yeah.
And then when the color debuted, he was like, we really want to be sort of obvious with this. So let's call it Disney's Wonderful World of Color.
Yeah.
But we still haven't even said what this was. I mean, you mentioned anthology series. It was like a variety show, essentially. They had cartoons and stuff. I remember when I was a kid that the Davy Crockett TV show, and it says in this How Stuff Works article, it launched the coonskin cap craze. And I have a picture of little 5-year-old me with a musket and a leather vest and a coonskin cap on my head. So I was into that.
I had one too, but I don't have a picture of it, so I can't prove it.
I can probably dig that up and throw it up on the Instagram, maybe to align with this. So I'll try and find that.
You gotta.
I got it.
So there were also like a lot of documentary programming, right?
Yeah.
And you would think like, oh, okay, hard-hitting Frontline-esque documentaries. No, not at all. It meant that they would go and film stuff under various themes at Disneyland. They were essentially big ads for Disneyland. He used that big time. And I mean, they were well produced and interesting.
Sure.
But they really went to that well quite a bit in every episode. Not in the first episode, though. Instead, the first episode, and this is the moment that changed the world as far as color TV goes, it was on September 24th, 1961. And the episode was 2 parts. And the first one was an adventure in color. And it really was a bit of an adventure. Like, it was a bunch of little segments that really kind of showed off what you can do with color TV and just must have knocked the socks off, knocked the coonskin caps off of all the little kids sitting at home.
That's right. And it also featured something called the Spectrum Song, which kind of explained what was going on, because I guess they felt the need to explain color to people who had gone around their entire lives seeing real life in color. But I guess, like you said, it was a pretty whiz-bang thing to see it on your TV for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So they went to great lengths to probably over-explain that. And this is also when we got the debut of Professor Ludwig von Drake from the Disney duck world.
Yeah, he was kind of an eccentric inventor. His self-written bio was he's an eminent psychologist, renowned color expert, etymologist, the most sought-after lecturer in the world.
Yeah.
He is undoubtedly the outstanding genius of the century. So he was fairly egotistical, but he was also funny, and he became beloved, and this is where he came from, that first adventure in color half. And then the second half was a theatrical release featuring Donald Duck, because all of these like Disney cartoons that we just, take for granted today, you used to have to go to the theater to see them. But when you went to the theater to see them, they were in color.
Yeah.
You saw them on TV, they were in black and white. Now you could see them in color on TV without leaving the comfort of your home.
What was their deal with the ducks? Was that, I guess it's just like any other cartoon animal, but they really leaned into the ducks.
It was a great excuse to draw something without pants.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. I never got into any. I was a little old for like DuckTales and all that stuff.
That was a good show.
So like Donald Duck was my only, I guess, exposure, my only duck exposure, his little feathered fanny. Oh, sorry, listeners in England. I know what that means there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Nice catch. To be perfectly honest, I was a little old for DuckTales too, but I still watched it.
Yeah, well, we all regress.
I never progressed, I think.
Oh, come on.
So just like Disney probably promised RCA and NBC, like they started selling color TVs like hotcakes, thanks to, in large part, the wonderful world of color. Disney's wonderful world of color, to be exact.
That's right. And that feels like a great time for a break, huh?
Yes, it does.
All right. We'll be right back, everybody.
All right. So you might think that we're going in chronological order. We are not.
No.
So we're going to go back in time a little bit from the debut of color TV, but after the World's Fair in 1939, 2 years after. And we're going to go to, I never found out what network this was on. Did you?
No.
That's silly.
Let's just call it ESPN.
Okay, so on ESPN in 1941, on July 1st, this is a moment that changed the world. Some people who were watching the Brooklyn Dodgers at the Philadelphia Phillies essentially saw the first television ad ever.
Yeah, it was either 9 or 10 seconds long. It depends on the source that you cite, but it was pretty short. And all it was, and I know we've talked about this before because I have seen this before, and I can't think of any other reason why I would have.
Right.
But it is a scene of a bull of a clock face just sort of superimposed over a map of the United States. And it's had the phrase over the top of it, like a chyron, the world runs on bull of a time. And about 4,000 people saw this ad. And I imagine they were like, what the heck is this? Why am I hearing about Bulova?
And why do I suddenly feel like buying a Bulova watch?
Yeah, probably.
What's super quaint and sweet is that the ad cost Bulova $9.
That's
the
crazy.
Whole thing.
Even for the time, that's crazy.
Yeah, even at the time, that's $195 today.
Yeah.
So that was quite a sweet deal.
Sure.
And the what it did was show like we can do this. We can advertise to people. And it's not to say that there were just no ads on TV before the Bulova ad, but they just followed a completely different format, so much so that the Bulova ad is pretty safely considered among historians as the first actual TV commercial.
Yeah, and that's for a couple of reasons. You did mention some other ads, but before that, it was like, this program is sponsored by whatever, and that was just the ad. It wasn't actual TV commercial in between content. The first ad, I guess if you count that stuff, was in 1930, the year TV debuted, really, and it was a furrier. Man, it seems like it would have been from like 1830, but it was a furrier in Boston called I.J. Fox Furriers, who sponsored the CBS Orchestra. It was a program called the Fox Trappers. So that, that's kind of how ads went up until 41.
Yeah, and that was the radio format. It was essentially they just took the format that had been pioneered on radio, and now they were doing it on TV. That's not really an ad. If you call that an ad, you're just being contrarian, right?
Sure.
There were still even other ads, but they were illegal because it wasn't until 1941 that the FCC started issuing licenses to run commercials on broadcast networks. But that means that the ads before them were illegal. I could not find any mention of what these ads were for, but I got the impression that they were just experimentation networks kind of on the sly figuring out how to do it as they went along. So again, Bulova is the first actual TV commercial that was legal and that was also produced with the intent, the sole intent to sell a particular product on air. That was it. That space of air was filled up by an ad. That was the first time ever.
That's right. And I know we mentioned this before, but for those who aren't familiar with our canon, in the old days of Stuff You Should Know, our boss, Connell Byrne, who commissioned the whole show to begin with and changed our lives. Thank you, Connell. He came up to us at one point after we had been doing it a while and said, hey, people are running ads on podcasts now and we need to get into this. And we were like, no way, no how. We're not going to foul up our show by selling it. And then eventually he said, well, if we can sell this thing, it'll make the company money. And on down the road, maybe this just becomes your job. I don't know if he said that, but the writing was kind of on the wall. And maybe this can just become the only thing you do here, and you won't be writing articles for howstuffworks.com anymore. And we went, tell us more.
Yeah, you make a good case here.
Yeah.
Hey, Chuck, we're real quick, speaking of our canon, so for all of you listeners out there, it's a little behind-the-scenes peek.
Oh, yeah.
We have, I think, including short stuff, in the neighborhood of 2,300 episodes. It doesn't really get it across when you say 2,300. We have a ton of episodes in our back catalog, and people write in all the time, and they're like, you should do this episode. And we're like, we did, 7 years ago. And it's like a lot of people just have no idea the episodes we've done. So we're trying to, figure out how to get it out there better.
Yeah, for sure. That's the reason we mentioned this. We've been sort of putting our heads together at iHeartMedia because, like you said, a lot of people don't. I think iTunes serves up about 300, but here's a little trick. If you're on your podcast player for iTunes on your iPhone, if that's how you listen, when you scroll down through the first 5 episodes, there's a little button there that says, see all 2,000 plus episodes. And if you click on that, they're all there and you can scroll through. But, a lot of people don't know that. A lot of other players don't, who knows how many they display, but it's a frustration for us. And so it's just a gentle reminder that there are literally thousands of these episodes out there.
Yeah, they're all also, I think you said, on the iHeartRadio app, and StuffYouShouldKnow.com has the vast repository and a pretty good search function. And one of the ways we figured out, we could probably do a lot better about mentioning episodes, specifically when they come up in another episode, a new episode. But I feel like we're going to have to do a lot better than we normally do, which is, didn't we do some episode on something related to this?
Yeah.
We got to figure it out, but we will, because there's just a bunch of great episodes just sitting there waiting for people to discover.
That's right. And with that, we move on to...
Oh, wait.
Yes?
We have to do the Super Bowl comparison. You have to do it if you talk about the Bulova ad.
Do we really?
Yes.
All right. You take it away then. I refuse to take part.
So if you write or talk about the Bulova ad, it's basically incumbent upon you to compare that ad cost, the $9 cost, to what it would have cost had they run it on a Super Bowl. And so for the 2025 Super Bowl, if Bulova had run this, they would have paid $2.35 million for those 10 seconds.
Amazing.
Quite a deal.
That's right.
There, I just kept us from being sued.
Well, I don't even think I think we're supposed to say the big game, aren't we?
No, we're supposed to not buy into that.
Oh, okay. I gotcha. All right. Moving on to the next one on the list that was a good segue too, because we can't talk about our old episodes and then say, also, there was a devastating tsunami in 2004 in the Indian Ocean.
Right.
Because that happened, and if actually, you don't even have to be much of a certain age, but on December 26, 2004, there was an undersea earthquake, about a 9.0 magnitude that set off this incredible tsunami in the Indian Ocean. We've done episodes on tsunamis and earthquakes, and we've talked about all this before, but it was about 100 feet tall, traveling at 500 miles an hour, not much advance warning, and was one of the most devastating tragedies in human history. It killed close to 230,000 people in 14 countries. It also sparked the biggest rail disaster in history when it completely wiped out a train traveling along the coast of Sri Lanka. Mm-hmm. And we mention all this because the only positive that came out of this was the media's reaction, which sparked the incredible amount of philanthropy and aid and giving in its aftermath.
Yeah, because I was reading a study on this. It was called Media Coverage and Charitable Giving After the 2004 Tsunami. It was by Philip H. Brown and Jessica H. Minty.
Yeah.
And they said like the media coverage was unprecedented. Like the world didn't forget about it in like 3 days.
Yeah.
It was 24-hour coverage of this disaster for weeks on end, right? And because these images were broadcast around the world, and because it was so mind-bogglingly devastating, people just opened up their pockets.
Yeah.
I saw 99 different countries donated, and 13 of those countries had never donated for a natural disaster relief before. It got to everybody.
Yeah, and there are, I think, about 195 countries in the world.
Yeah, which it's kind of like, do better, other 96 countries.
Yeah, I imagine the countries that didn't give had their own issues going on, you know?
Well, now I feel bad.
No, don't feel so bad. But they have done studies, that 2006 study that you referenced, they said that the Catholic relief charities got $1 million in 3 days, which would turn out to be small beans in the long run. But over 3 days, that's quite a haul. Save the Children got more than $6 million in 4 days. The Lutheran World Relief raised more money in a week than it does in a year. And the AP found that 30% of American families donated in the first 2 weeks. And just from the United States, there was about $1.6 billion, and estimates around the world were about $14 billion raised.
Yeah, and just to kind of go over the power of the media, one thing I left out here is that same study found that 1 extra minute of coverage on television equated to an increase in internet donations by 16 to 20%. So like the impact, it's just essentially like a classroom lesson in the impact that media can have, the positive impact that media can have. And that is definitely something to TV's credit.
Yeah.
You want to move backward to Vietnam? Yeah.
Again, we're jumping all over the timeline. And we're in Vietnam right now because I guess we should talk a little bit about pre-Vietnam and as far as media coverage go, because before that, World War II and certainly the Korean War, what you got as far as media coverage was highly sort of curated and regulated government-mediated film reels. You would get news updates. They would play in movie theaters. By the time we got to Vietnam, they had, like handheld cameras you could literally take to the front lines. Mm-hmm. And it really changed the way war coverage went. And as a result, the way people felt about the war, because World War II, they were pretty rah-rah, and you got these rah-rah films. So morale was big in America. They were like, hey, this is great. We're fighting the Nazis. Right.
Another huge factor was that by 1966, 93% of American homes had a TV. And just 13 to 16 years earlier, in 1950, it was 9%.
Yeah.
So TV was firmly established in the American psyche. You remember in Wonder Years, whenever they sat down and had dinner, they always had the TV on showing Vietnam coverage?
Yeah.
That's what it was like.
Yeah, for sure.
And so the fact that everybody had TVs, the fact that now there was like cameras that you could easily allow a journalist to embed with, and the idea that the government really shouldn't control propaganda, shouldn't control the news like that, created this atmosphere where the broadcasters were willing to show like really heartrending, unflinching stories of what the soldiers fighting for the United States were doing in Vietnam and what was being done to them. And it really shaped America's view of that war. Yeah, I mean, it definitely made the mood and how we saw the war like pretty dour. But people, going into Vietnam, there were a lot of people already, like before even the coverage started, that were like, "What are we doing in Vietnam again?" Right. Yeah. It wasn't like World War II where the Nazis were trying to take over the world, and so this just made everything worse. But worse in a positive way because it was showing the reality of things. It wasn't government controlled. I'm sure there were, just countless meetings behind the scenes in the Oval Office where they were like, we're getting crushed by the reality of this war and how it's being depicted in the media. I'm sure they were, pretty upset about losing control of that narrative. Yeah. No, they definitely were. And later on, I think the Iraq War was considered another television war. Yeah. Certainly the Gulf War, the first one, was. But the government kind of learned from losing control over the narrative in Vietnam, but they weren't able to regain control. Yeah. And so the sentiment toward Vietnam and the United States just kept getting worse and worse, and protests were getting bigger and bigger. There was like a very healthy anti-war movement. And essentially, because the public was feeling this way, the public sentiment was that way toward Vietnam. And because if you turned on the news, the evening national news, you would see like terrible coverage that was not flattering at all to what the United States was doing in Vietnam. Yeah. Elected officials basically had no choice but to listen to people. And it definitely led to probably an earlier withdrawal than the United States may have otherwise taken. Yeah. And changed the way that it went moving forward because, the writing was on the wall at that point for the U.S. government. They're like, we can't go back to World War II as much as they wanted to kind of control that narrative. Mm-hmm. The American people at that point would not have it moving forward. So it really kind of changed the whole relationship of how any kind of conflict is covered. It did. So now they've struck a balance between allowing reporters to embed and just relying on those national news reporters to disseminate the propaganda. Because if you watch embedded coverage, for the most part, it is fairly rah-rah. Even if it's not overtly rah-rah, because the American public's a little more savvy than that, it's still nothing like the coverage was of Vietnam, from what I understand. Well, yeah, and just the way wars are fought now, there's not like a front line like you had back then. So sure. I remember watching the Gulf War, and it was just all those like, black and white shots of bombing things from thousands of feet above, Yeah, and then the beginning of the Iraq War, remember it was shock and awe? Yeah. And it was produced essentially for TV, the initial attack on Iraq. It's so gross I don't know. I'm not going to editorialize, but to name something like that, like, hey, that sounds pretty awesome. I think it was either Rumsfeld or Cheney who came up with that, and I'm not surprised either way. For sure. Should we take another break? Oh, gosh, I wasn't expecting that. Sure. All right, we'll take another break and finish up with a couple of more moments that changed TV history right after this. All right, we're going to move on to another show, but we should mention that the original House of Works article included, of course, the moon landing, which was a huge TV event, but we covered all of that in which episode? We have an episode on that. It's called How Going to the Moon Works from 2019, and it was a really interesting episode that really covered in depth the lunar landing. That's right, part of the 2,300 episodes plus. That's right. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a TV show that we've talked about here and there before called Cops. Because Cops is, and I know I mentioned this in that other episode, whatever it was a show that I used to watch with more regularity than I like to admit now. I think everyone watched it a lot.
Well, it was never, and I'm not excusing it, but it was never like appointment TV. In fact, I don't even know when it came on. This was just in my younger channel surfing days where it was like, you're surfing around, Cops was on. I would watch Cops, and I was never like, yeah, go. But, I've found it probably entertaining and amusing. And now that I'm a little older and know more, I was, slightly embarrassed that they were sort of exploiting many times people who had mental illness and who were suffering through poverty and addiction. And so I'm not so proud of that, but I'll admit that I watch my fair share of Cops.
I watched it too. So Cops changed the world in two ways. And this moment was March 11th, 1989, which is when it debuted on Fox. This is just 3 years after Fox premiered, 9 months before The Simpsons even premiered. Cops started on Fox, and it helped make Fox the fourth network. It was just such a huge show right out of the gate. And the two ways that it changed the world is, one, it set the groundwork for reality TV.
Yeah.
You can make a pretty good case that it was it may be the originator of reality TV. There weren't scripts. There wasn't any star. There wasn't any narrative or plot lines. It was just like, here's some cops and here's a crime that they're going to fight. We don't have a script. We just generally know what's going on, which ostensibly is the basis of any reality show.
Yeah, I think, what we should do an episode on at some point is, I can't remember the name of it now because it just came to me, but I think kind of the first real reality show was that one where they followed the American family around in the 70s, maybe.
Wasn't it PBS or British or something?
I think it was PBS. And then they made a fictional account of that as a movie, not like 4 or 5, 6 years ago. That was pretty good too. I think James Gandolfini was in it. Okay.
I would have guessed Peter Sarsgaard as the dad.
It was really good, though. Anyway, that really kicked off reality TV. MTV's Real World didn't come out till 92, but Cops certainly laid the groundwork for kind of like trashy reality TV,
Right. Yes. Yeah. The other effect that it had on the world was it really reinforced unfair racial stereotypes among white Americans toward Black Americans, people of color in general in the United States. It was an enormous show. It drew like 8 million viewers each week. That's a crazy amount of people.
Yeah.
It peaked in the 90s. But even from the first episode, civil rights groups were like, whoa, wait a second here. Like, a lot of these criminals are Black, and this is way disproportionate to reality. I thought this was a reality show. And the Cops producers, Barbara Langley Productions, were like, well, it's reality-ish, It's not the actual portrayal of reality. It's a skewed toward entertainment version of reality. So just settle down. And the civil rights groups are like, we're not settling down. That actually makes it even worse.
Yeah, I mean, the Cops loved it because they were portrayed as heroes. It was a great recruiting tool for police officers. And, I guess we have some stats from the Marshall Project. They did a analysis in 1994. Most of the officers, on balance, were white. Suspects were more likely to be Black or Hispanic. As far as the numbers go, they found that while sexual assault, robbery, and murders account for just 13% of all crime, in 1994 at least, it was 43% of what you saw in Cops.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember a lot of sexual assault and murder, though. Like everything I saw in Cops were like robberies and drug arrests or just DUI, being drunk out in public, stuff like that.
Or a dude hiding under a kiddie pool.
Yeah, he was probably drunk or on drugs.
Right.
That's what I remember. I don't remember like more serious crimes, so I was kind of wondering about that stat.
Yeah, I don't remember that either. They also found, that same study found that the show was far more likely to associate Black and brown people than whites with violent crime. Black and brown people were 40%. There was a 40% chance compared to a 13% chance for whites. So it was like, it wasn't just civil rights groups like sensing there's something off about this. Like, people conducted actual studies and found also that a viewer of Cops was likelier to maintain the racial stereotype that Blacks are typically criminals than a person who didn't watch Cops. So it had a really large impact. And yet, despite that, this is 94 that study came out. it wasn't until 2013 that Fox was finally like, okay, fine. Yes. Okay. We'll cancel the show. We've made our money over 25 seasons. And thanks to civil rights organization Color of Change, Fox dropped it. And that was the end of Cops Forever, right?
No. It was picked up by Spike TV. They ran it until 2020. And then after 2020, with all the, sort of light shined on police brutality, they said, maybe it's just not so good to run this anymore. Mm-hmm. But Fox Nation stepped up and brought it back in 21, and it is still going in its 37th season. The other thing it did was sort of create the idea of the Florida Man, because they started, I believe they debuted in Broward County, right, and shot a lot there over the years. And they shot, I think they shot in more than 100 cities in the end, but a lot of their content was shot in Florida and kind of sort of reinforced this whole Florida Man thing. Yeah.
I don't know that that's skewed.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough.
Let's finish up, Chuck, on a truly happy moment. Well, depending on which nation you're from, the USSR or the United States. If you're from the United States, this is a really good high point for your country in 1980, and the 1980 Winter Olympics at Lake Placid, New York, to be exact. And there was this one event that America was really the unlikely winners in, and it was men's hockey.
That's right. This is during the height of the Cold War. So the U.S. and the Soviet Union, it was all you heard about if you were a kid growing up in the 70s and 80s. It was such a big deal. The Soviet Union won the Olympic gold medals in ice hockey in 56, and then 64, 68, 72, and 76. So they ran the Olympics basically from the mid-60s to the mid-70s. Mm-hmm. And then 1980 came along, and you had a U.S. hockey team. And first of all, the Soviets hockey team, I believe there was a player, Fedosov, who said later on that was probably the best team that the Soviet Union had ever put together. So they were the Drago, and we were a little rocky because the American team at the time, this is before they allowed pro players to play in the Olympics, there was a bunch of college kids, and they were, to call them underdogs was a massive understatement.
Yeah, and a lot of the credit goes to the coach of the Olympic men's team, Herb Brooks, who was the University of Minnesota Golden Gophers hockey coach.
Kurt Russell.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he played him in the movie.
Oh, I thought that was Emilio Estevez.
Well done.
So the United States did not, despite how it ended, they did not get off on a very good footing. There was an exhibition game at Madison Square Garden a few days before the 1980 Olympics, same month and everything. And the Soviet Union and the United States played in this exhibition match, and the Soviets really, you could use the word walloped pretty effectively in this case. The Soviets won 10-3. So it did not look like the United States men's hockey team was going to produce much in the Olympics that year.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of double-digit scores in hockey. If you're not familiar with hockey, you see a lot of 2-0, 3-2.
Right.
Once you score over 10 goals, it's a big deal. So the Americans weren't even supposed to advance that much in the Olympics, but they had a bunch of comeback wins, had a lot of close calls that they won, and they got into the medal round and faced the Soviets, who up to that point in the Olympics had outscored their opponents 51-11. Mm-hmm. So on February 22nd, 1980, and I know I've mentioned this before, but I actually watched this match as I guess I wasn't even 9 yet. It was right before my 9th birthday.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't even that into hockey, but we were an Olympic family.
Right.
And I remember, I have a very distinct memory of being in my parents' bedroom for some reason, which I usually wasn't much allowed in. Because it was, I don't know, it was the 70s. It was like, don't go in my bedroom. Mm-hmm. But we had this little black and white TV. I guess my dad was watching other stuff out there on the larger console TV. But I remember being in their bedroom and watching this match on the little black and white TV and knowing as a little 8-year-old, what a huge deal this was.
Yeah, and you said something that I think kind of applied to a lot of the nation. Hockey was not really a thing. Nothing like it is now in the United States. you had to live in a place where your rivers froze over every year to like hockey. It was a very regional sport.
Yeah.
And yet, like you said, the entire United States tuned in for this match because it was the evil Soviets.
Yeah.
And like to our younger viewers or listeners, like you can't imagine what they told us about the Russians. Like essentially, if you were a kid in the 70s, 80s, probably 60s too, you were basically taught that if you ever crossed paths with anybody from the Soviet Union, they would slash your throat just as soon as look at you. Like that was essentially what people thought of the Soviet Union at the time, and vice versa. So there was the big bad Soviets who were just this huge juggernaut of a team, and the Americans, the ragtag underdog Americans, standing up to this evil empire. And that's why everybody tuned in.
Yeah, it was. I remember having the distinct feeling it was communism versus democracy, really.
Right. Which is I think what happened in that Super Bowl with the Falcons versus the Patriots. Same thing.
Oh man, my darkest day as a Falcons fan, maybe.
That was rough.
It was either that or losing to the Jets last week.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, I can't talk about it.
Okay, I won't.
Very sad season ticket holder here. So Americans, of course, came back and won. And I remember our goalie, Jim Craig, like skating around after wrapped up in the American flag. And that was my first like real taste of like understanding what it was like to be an American. And again, a different time where, you know, it was the Cold War and it felt like a real win for democracy in a weird way.
Yeah. So, a lot of people, well, I think basically everybody calls that game the Miracle on Ice.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because the commentator who was calling the hockey game, Al Michaels, who, as far as I know, had only called one hockey game previously at the Sapporo Winter Olympics years before, he did a magnificent job. And as the time is running out, in the third period, America staged a comeback and scored 2 goals. And they were up 4-3 with several seconds left. And remember, this Soviet team was good enough that they could score a goal and tie within a few seconds. So the Americans are just skating around the ice trying to keep the puck away from the Russians. And Al Michaels is counting down the seconds. And I think with about 4 seconds left, when it became clear that the Soviets weren't going to be able to score a goal, he goes, "Do you believe in miracles?" Yes. And if you watch it today, you just get just amazing chills. Just even the last like 30 seconds of that game. It's really neat.
For sure. I wonder if before the game, Al Michaels was like, "It's a puck, Al. It's a puck. It's a match. It's not a game.
Yeah.
And if anyone brings up icing, just you explain it."
Right. Just pretend it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
So ESPN called it the most famous hockey game ever played.
Yeah, for sure.
Sports Illustrated ranked it in 1999 as the top sports moment of the 20th century. It was a big deal. And again, I would strongly urge you to, if you don't go watch the whole match, watch at least the third period or watch the last couple of minutes and several minutes after that where they're celebrating. It's just, you can just feel like the whole country going crazy.
Yeah, pretty incredible. And if you're ever, at a dinner party and a group of people and they're talking about when the U.S. beat the Soviets for the gold medal, you can be the actually guy because that was not the gold medal match. I think a lot of people remember it that way because it was such a big deal. But that was, I guess, a bronze round.
Yeah.
And the U.S. went on to win that gold against Finland.
Yep. 2 days later.
Pretty great.
Pretty great, everybody. So that's it. Those are the only moments that changed the world in the history of TV. All the rest of them were pretty ho-hum.
That's right.
You got anything else?
I got nothing else, sir.
All right. I think this is a pretty good start to 2026, don't you?
I think it's great.
Okay. Chuck said great. That means it's time for listener mail.
Yeah, you know what? Let's start off the year without a listener mail and just make a push to remind everyone that we're still kicking off pretty soon. In a few months, it'll be year 18 in April. And we always are still looking to grow the show. And we don't do it much, but if you could rate and review the show, that means a lot. If you could tell friends and family, like, hey, there's this podcast, been around forever, and we like it. We may or may not be Golden Globe nominated. We don't know at this point because we're going to find out next Monday. But go out and spread the good word. And we look forward to seeing everybody on the road this year in the United States and Canada. Yeah,
we're going to be on the road this month in January, also in April, and then Canada this summer. So you can get tickets and info at stuffyoushouldknow.com. And if you want to say Happy New Year or whatever, you can send us an email. We love that. You can send it to stuffpodcast@iheartradio.com.
Stuff You Should Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.